You know her as Aunt Esther from Sanford and Son, fiery, fearless, and unforgettable. But how did LaWanda Page go from struggling fire dancer to TV legend, only to vanish from the spotlight in quiet tragedy? Long before Hollywood came calling, LaWanda was Alberta Pearl, hustling in nightclubs, mourning the loss of not one, but 3 husbands. It took one old friend, Red Fox, to pull her from the edge and give her a shot at stardom. But behind the laughs were secrets, heartbreak, illness, and a net worth that might surprise you. What happened to her family? What did she leave behind in that abandoned house? And why was her final chapter so hidden from the world? Stick around as we uncover the tragic truth behind LaWanda Page's rise, fall, and what she really left behind. The early spark. LaWanda Page's humble beginnings. LaWanda Page was born Alberta Richmond on October 19, 1920, in either Alabama or Mississippi. Records vary on the exact place. Her mother, Estella Richmond, eventually left her husband Willie Richmond and took young Alberta to Cleveland, Ohio for a new start. There, Estella remarried a man named Charles Murray and began using the name Estella Murray. Cleveland turned out to be a stage in disguise for little Alberta. From a young age, she had a fire in her spirit and a deep desire to perform. Dancing became her first outlet. Almost every day, she and 4 neighborhood girls would head down to the city's black business district, line up on the sidewalk, and dance for whoever would stop and watch. As soon as a crowd gathered, Alberta, soon to be known as LaWanda, would step out in front and steal the show. Whether it was the Charleston, the Black Bottom, or the cakewalk, she nailed every move. The crowd rewarded their talent with loose change, often bringing in 20 to 25 cents a day. Impressive earnings for a child at the time. LaWanda's popularity only grew when she began performing regularly at the Friendly Inn Settlement, a nearby community center. But everything changed when the family relocated to St. Louis. The streets there were unfamiliar, and the sidewalk performances stopped. LaWanda turned her focus to school and enrolled at Banneker Elementary. There, she met a younger boy known for his quick wit and wild stories. His name was John Elroy Sanford. Years later, the world would come to know him as Red Fox. LaWanda Page and Red Fox quickly became close friends in their youth. The two were always putting on pretend stage shows, joking around and dreaming big. Even as kids, they knew they wanted more from life. LaWanda saw herself dancing under bright lights, while Red imagined himself on stage as a singer or comic. But as they got older, life took them in different directions. Red left St. Louis for Chicago to chase opportunity, while LaWanda stayed behind, trying to revive her dance ambitions. Street dancing, however, wasn't enough anymore, and for a young black teen, professional training was out of reach. Still, she kept at it. LaWanda practiced at house parties and community events, determined to make something of herself. She was tall, graceful, and confident, and she started drawing attention, especially from a man named John Peel. He wasn't particularly handsome, but he was older, sharply dressed, and full of promises. LaWanda, still just a teenage girl, married him in 1934. He was about 21. But married life wasn't the fairy tale she expected. John had no real income. Aside from a few nice dinners, he couldn't provide for her. They couldn't even afford their own place and ended up moving in with LaWanda's mother. Feeling trapped in a mistake, LaWanda returned to dancing, but this time, it was to survive. At just 15, she entered the world of nightclub entertainment. She knew how to command attention, but the competition was brutal. Other dancers were seasoned pros who dominated the stage. LaWanda knew she had to bring something different, so she stepped back, observed, and studied. She let others teach her tricks, learned how to refine her act. By the time LaWanda Page turned 18, she had fully transformed into a show-stopping performer, and not just any kind. She was a fire dancer, and trust, the name fit. With her hair perfectly styled, makeup on point, and curves that could stop traffic, LaWanda wasn't just dancing. She was commanding every stage she stepped on. Forget comparisons. LaWanda was in a league of her own. At the time, she performed under the stage name the Bronze Goddess. Dressed in a shimmering two-piece bikini, she would glide onto the stage with confidence, rhythm, and undeniable allure. Then came the signature moment. While topless, an assistant would bring out a bowl of oil from the wings. LaWanda would dip her fingers into it, and with practiced skill and a little sleight of hand, ignite her fingertips into flames. She'd wave her flaming hands through the air, hips swaying in time to the music, captivating the entire room. Then she'd descend from the stage and approach the audience. A planted guest near the front would reach for a cigarette. LaWanda would glide over, stop him, and sensually light it with her burning fingers. The crowd went wild every time, but behind the spectacle, her personal life remained grounded. Despite their struggles, LaWanda was still with her first husband, John Peel. They lived between her mother's home and his parents' place. During that time, LaWanda gave birth to their daughter, Clara Estella Peel. Now a mother, LaWanda had more reason than ever to push harder and hotter. Soon, her act included not just fire on her hands, but fire beneath her feet. By now, LaWanda Page wasn't just dancing with fire. She was walking on it, literally. Half-dressed or sometimes fully nude, she'd glide across open flames like it was second nature. The crowd? They lost their minds. It wasn't just a show, it was an experience, and it paid well. But then, life hit hard. Her husband, John Peel, passed away. LaWanda was suddenly on her own, with a child to raise. Her mother was still in the picture, but the weight of survival was on LaWanda's shoulders. She wasn't just dancing for applause anymore. She was dancing to keep her family afloat. So she raised the stakes. She added a new, dangerous element to her act: fire swallowing. That's when she earned a new title: the Flame Goddess. Crowds came from everywhere to see this daring, magnetic woman turn flames into art. Her act was so hot, literally and figuratively, that an international touring show invited her to join. And she did. For nearly a decade, LaWanda toured the world lighting stages ablaze. Along the way, she married again. But heartbreak followed once more. Her second husband died too. Still, LaWanda kept going. Yet as time passed, audience tastes shifted. Fire alone wasn't enough. That's when she found a man who owned a boa constrictor. She asked to borrow it for her show. With the snake coiled around her torso, moving seductively across her body, LaWanda would still swallow flaming rods. It was sensational, until the third performance. That night, the snake panicked, shot up, and wrapped itself around her neck mid-act. LaWanda started stomping, spinning, flailing, looking like a firecracker had gone off inside her. Fortunately, 2 stagehands rushed in and managed to pry the boa constrictor off LaWanda Page's neck just in time. Shaken and furious, LaWanda didn't hold back. She stormed backstage, grabbed that snake by the head, dragged it outside, and in a fit of rage, chopped its head clean off. That was the last time a snake ever shared her spotlight. Without the snake, her act lost its edge. The shock factor was gone, and LaWanda knew it. She was getting older, and exotic dancing was a young woman's game. She wasn't sure what her next move would be. Then, somewhere around 1950 or 1951, she met a man named Rivers. His first name might have been William or Mark, depending on who you ask. What mattered was that he was kind, and LaWanda fell in love. They got married, but heartbreak seemed to follow her like a shadow. Mr. Rivers passed away not long after, making him her third husband to die. After that, LaWanda reportedly swore off marriage for good. By 1952, she stepped off the touring circuit and returned to Los Angeles, taking a job at the Brass Rail nightclub. Sometimes she waited tables, but more often she danced, either solo or as part of the chorus line. One night after a show, she was backstage cracking jokes with a group of comedians. Her timing, wit, and delivery caught the attention of the club owner. He was so impressed that he offered her $125 a week to perform stand-up comedy. That's how it started. LaWanda Page took the mic and never looked back. It wasn't long before the veteran comedy duo Skillet and Leroy invited LaWanda Page to join their act. The chemistry was instant. When the three of them hit the stage together, it was pure comedy chaos, the kind that left audiences in stitches. LaWanda stuck with them for over 15 years, touring the country and recording several raunchy comedy albums that became cult favorites. Then, in the early 1970s, a twist of fate showed up in the form of Aaron Russo, a white producer curious about what was happening on the black comedy circuit. One night, he dropped by a local club to catch Skillet and Leroy. He chuckled through their set. But when LaWanda stepped on stage, Russo erupted into uncontrollable laughter. He was blown away by her boldness, timing, and raw edge. At the time, Russo was working on a show that was just starting to pick up steam, Sanford and Son. He rushed back to the studio and raved to the crew about this hilarious woman he saw who would be perfect to play Fred Sanford's girlfriend. As he described her, Red Fox, star of the show, stopped him. "I know LaWanda. We grew up together," he said. "You want her on the show? I'll call her." LaWanda came in to read for the girlfriend role, but her no-nonsense attitude and fiery delivery didn't quite match the soft-spoken character they'd envisioned. However, another role was brewing, a character named Aunt Esther. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but LaWanda struggled on set. She missed her marks, stared away from the camera, stumbled over lines, and stuck too closely to the script without adding the flair producers wanted. Aaron Russo was ready to fire her, but Red Fox stepped in. "No way," he told Russo. "She's perfect for this. Give me 2 days. I'll work with her." Russo hesitated. That's when Fox laid it out. "If she goes, I go." After Red Fox stood his ground to keep LaWanda Page on Sanford and Son, he didn't waste the opportunity. He brought her in privately, just the two of them, and patiently walked her through the ropes. Little by little, LaWanda found her footing. She learned how to hit her marks, mastered the art of the comedic pause, and tightened up her delivery. Technically, she was getting everything right. But something was still missing. Fox pulled her aside again and, with brutal honesty, told her the truth. "They still might let you go, because you're not being you." That hit home. LaWanda had been trying to act like Aunt Esther, like some generic 60-year-old church lady. But the role needed her spice, her bite, her personality. So the next day, LaWanda showed up. She strutted onto set with fire in her step and called Red an old fish-eyed fool. She swung her purse, called folks heathens, and lit up the screen with that raw, unfiltered energy. The producers were floored. They couldn't get enough. Suddenly, Aunt Esther was a breakout star. Behind the scenes? Well, that's where the stories get wild. According to cast gossip and even DeMond Wilson himself, LaWanda wasn't just bringing laughs. She was allegedly the backstage plug, showing up with weed, coke, and whatever else the crew might have needed. Aunt Esther's wig may have been stiff on camera, but behind the scenes, it was leaning gangsta style. And when LaWanda got comfortable, she really let loose. Rumor has it she once shared the stage with Millie Jackson in Atlanta, dancing, joking, and even tossing her clothes into the audience mid-show. Whether folks were trying to catch the prize or run for cover, one thing's for sure. LaWanda left an impression. She became a staple at celebrity events and awards shows, always in demand for her boldness and wit. It felt like the good times would never end. But as the 80s crept in, cracks started to show. Trouble hit Sanford and Son, and by 1977, the show came to an end. After Sanford and Son ended, there were faint whispers in Hollywood about giving LaWanda Page her own spin-off show. But like so many things in the industry, those talks fizzled out before anything could take shape. In the meantime, LaWanda kept herself visible with a few guest roles, most notably as Cousin Myrtle on Different Strokes. But what she really needed was steady work, something permanent to keep her going. Hope returned briefly when a sequel series titled Sanford launched in 1980. It seemed like LaWanda might step back into the spotlight alongside Red Fox. But that light dimmed quickly. The show only lasted a single season, ending in 1981. By then, Hollywood was starting to close its doors on her. Offers dried up, and behind the scenes, LaWanda was also caring for her elderly mother. With little choice, she turned back to her roots, stand-up comedy. And let's be clear, LaWanda's comedy was not for the faint of heart. Her act was raw, raunchy, and wildly unapologetic. She talked about things most comedians wouldn't even hint at, and audiences couldn't get enough. Some probably left her shows clutching their pearls and praying for forgiveness, but they always laughed. She wasn't headlining major arenas, but she found her rhythm again in small clubs across the country. That underground comedy grind carried her through much of the 1980s. When the 90s rolled around, LaWanda began to appear on screen again, though only in small roles. One of her most recognizable cameos was in the 1995 cult classic Friday. Outside of those occasional appearances, she mostly stayed out of the spotlight. By that point, she wasn't even doing her old comedy specials anymore. A few years before her death, Paige performed on stage in a wheelchair. Her character was a killer hotel manager. The musical play was a rendition of The Inquest of Sam Cooke, and it showed how the entertainer lost his life. What was going on behind closed doors wasn't well known, but it's believed her daughter, Clara, began helping care for her as LaWanda's health declined. Eventually, she was diagnosed with diabetes, a condition that would later contribute to her death. On September 14, 2002, LaWanda Page passed away from a heart attack brought on by complications from diabetes. She was 81 years old. LaWanda lived the life she loved and loved the life she lived, said Donald Welch, the director of Take It to the Lord, or Else, a comedy gospel musical in which Page starred. He explained that Page often used the phrase to soothe her pain when close friends died. And just like that, one more chapter of old Hollywood came to a close with the passing of LaWanda Page. Her legacy? Bold, funny, fearless, and utterly unforgettable. Were LaWanda Page and Lynn Hamilton really sisters? The truth behind a long-standing rumor. On June 19, 2025, beloved actress Lynn Hamilton passed away at the age of 94. Her former manager and publicist, Calvin Carson, confirmed the news in heartfelt posts on Facebook and Instagram, noting that Hamilton died peacefully, surrounded by her grandchildren, loved ones, and caregivers. In an official statement, Carson honored her legacy. With profound gratitude and admiration, we celebrate the extraordinary life of iconic actress Alzenia Lynn Hamilton Jenkins, whose remarkable legacy continues to uplift and inspire. Her illustrious career, spanning over 5 decades, has left an indelible mark on the world of entertainment, motivating audiences across the globe through her work as a model, stage, film, and television actress. While tributes poured in for the trailblazing star, so did a familiar question. Were Lynn Hamilton and LaWanda Page really sisters? The confusion had persisted for years, largely due to obituaries and online speculation. One of LaWanda Page's obituaries, including a version published in the Los Angeles Times, named her sister as Lynn Hamilton. Naturally, fans assumed that this referred to the actress who played Donna Harris, Fred Sanford's long-suffering fiancée on Sanford and Son. But the truth is, Lynn Hamilton and LaWanda Page were not biologically related. The rumor was so widespread that even Demond Wilson, who played Lamont Sanford, felt the need to speak out. In a 2016 interview with the Washington Times, he addressed the myth while promoting his memoir, Second Banana, the bittersweet memoirs of the Sanford and Son years. I got sick and tired of seeing people on the internet misquoting things. Now the newest thing is they're saying that Lynn Hamilton, who played Donna, is LaWanda Page's sister. That is the most ridiculous thing ever, Wilson said. I wrote the book to set the record straight. I got tired of answering stupid stuff. Despite the lack of a blood relation, LaWanda and Lynn shared a close and genuine friendship. In an interview with Demetris Big Meech Taylor, Lynn Hamilton fondly recalled how their bond grew behind the scenes. She laughed when asked about being LaWanda's sister, and then explained how the idea actually started, with LaWanda herself. She absolutely adored me, and I adored her. We were very, very close. At one point, she said to me, "You know, I love you. I feel like you're my sister." And from that moment on, she introduced me as her sister. Lynn chuckled as she recalled reading LaWanda's obituary and seeing her own name listed as the sister. "I had no idea she had taken it that far," she said. "But we were close right up until the end. That's how it came about. She just adopted me." LaWanda Page passed away in 2002 at the age of 81 due to complications from diabetes. She was survived by her daughter, Clara Johnson, who sadly passed away 4 years later at the age of 69. So while the two actresses weren't sisters by blood, they were sisters in spirit, a testament to the deep, enduring bond that formed between two women who helped shape one of television's most iconic shows. What was LaWanda Page's net worth? LaWanda Page had a net worth estimated at around $500,000 at the time of her death in 2002. While that may seem modest by today's Hollywood standards, it's important to understand how her income reflected the era she worked in, and the challenges Black actresses faced in getting fair compensation. During her time on Sanford and Son in the 1970s, Page was earning a weekly salary of approximately $5,000 to $7,500 per episode, depending on her screen time and negotiations. Considering that the average sitcom season at the time had around 20 to 24 episodes, this meant she could have earned up to $180,000 per year during the show's peak. Adjusted for inflation, that's the equivalent of around $900,000 a year today. However, LaWanda wasn't just making money from acting. She was a veteran of the comedy circuit long before her television fame. As a raunchy stand-up comedian known as the Bronze Goddess of Comedy, she toured across the country performing in clubs and releasing party records, X-rated comedy albums that sold well within urban communities. Titles like Watch It, Sucker and Sane Advice gave her additional income through vinyl sales and live performances. Despite this success, Page never reached the multi-million-dollar wealth that some of her contemporaries eventually achieved. Part of the reason was limited opportunities for Black female comedians in mainstream entertainment. Additionally, many of the shows and comedy albums she appeared in did not include syndication or long-term residuals that could have added to her wealth later in life. Still, LaWanda Page left behind a lasting legacy and a body of work that still entertains audiences today. Inside LaWanda Page's homes. While LaWanda Page lit up television screens with her unforgettable role as Aunt Esther on Sanford and Son, her personal life off-screen was far more low-key. Unlike many Hollywood stars who flaunted their wealth, LaWanda chose a modest, grounded lifestyle. She never lived in grand mansions or sprawling estates. Instead, she settled into comfortable, unpretentious homes that reflected her humble beginnings and practical sensibilities. During the height of her fame in the 1970s, LaWanda lived in the South Los Angeles area, not far from the neighborhoods where she first honed her comedic voice on the nightclub circuit. Her home was a modest one-story house, likely built in the 1940s or 1950s, with a simple front yard, barred windows, common in the area, and a warm, inviting porch. It wasn't a glamorous celebrity home by any means, but it offered peace and familiarity. The kind of place where neighbors knew your name and where she could retreat after a long day of filming. After her years on Sanford and Son, LaWanda continued to live simply. She never moved into the Hollywood Hills or Beverly Hills like many of her peers. Friends and relatives recalled her home being filled with vintage furniture, African-American art, gospel records, and photos of family and friends. Today, many of the houses in the neighborhoods where LaWanda once lived still stand, though the communities have evolved. Some homes have been renovated or repainted, while others show signs of aging. While her exact address has remained private out of respect, fans who visit the area often say they feel a certain spirit in the streets, like a piece of comedy history still lingers there. LaWanda Page's charitable works and lasting legacy. LaWanda Page was far more than a television character. She was a generous spirit who quietly gave back to her community. While her charitable work never made headlines, those close to her remember her deep commitment to helping others, especially young black artists and struggling families in Los Angeles. In the late 1980s, LaWanda donated an estimated $20,000, a substantial amount for the time, to the Watts Community Center, a local nonprofit providing meals, tutoring, and after-school programs to underserved children. She frequently participated in their fundraising events, often performing free stand-up sets to raise money and awareness. For LaWanda, it wasn't about public recognition. It was about making sure kids had a chance to dream, just like she once did. Page also supported the United Negro College Fund, contributing both time and money to events that helped raise scholarships for young black students. Additionally, she mentored younger comedians, including women trying to break into stand-up comedy, a field that was still male-dominated. Her home became an informal safe haven for many who needed advice, encouragement, or just someone who understood. Her legacy, however, goes far beyond donations. LaWanda Page broke barriers for black female comics, following in the footsteps of pioneers like Moms Mabley while creating a voice that was uniquely her own. She was bold, unapologetic, and deeply authentic. To this day, artists like Thea Vidalo, Myra J., and Tony Spires speak of her warmth, wisdom, and strength. As director Donald Welch once said, LaWanda lived the life she loved and loved the life she lived. And through her work, both on stage and off, she made sure others had the chance to live theirs too. What do you think was LaWanda Page's greatest contribution? Her fierce comedy, her barrier-breaking career, or her heart for giving back? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about LaWanda Page's and other beloved stars. Until next time.